Welcome into the Sports Objective, 50 Pirates in 50 days, as we give that to you as we're counting down the days to the football season here in 2020. And right now, of course, we have Bubba Rosenbaum. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Dave. It was the first day back to school, optional teacher work day. So it's been a long day, but a good one.
You mean you actually work? You're working again? Wow.
Yeah, yep.
For people that don't know, I'm joking with Bubba, giving him a hard time. He's a teacher, and with all the craziness going on with COVID-19, he's had to work from home and do all kinds of crazy stuff. But he and his wife, Stacy, work really hard, and I'm proud of all our teachers for sure. Bubba, we've got a very special guest, 50 Pirates in 50 days, right?
Yeah, we do. We're catching up with a guy from the mid-'90s, and the Pirates obviously had so much success during those years, going to a couple of Liberty Bowls, also that 8-win season in 1996. Welcome into the program, a guy who played on the defensive side of the ball, Matt Semenza.
Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here with you. Always love talking Pirate football. I don't get too many opportunities up here in Connecticut to talk Pirate football, so I'm really happy to be here.
Out of the gate, I do have one question, not Pirate football related. What are your thoughts on UConn not having a football season? How are local people taking that out of the gate? I'll ask you that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's pretty devastating for the local community. I have several friends up here that are UConn graduates. The program is just not in great shape, to be perfectly honest. When they left the conference, by leaving the American Conference, they became an independent, and it left them exposed. And it must be very difficult to schedule, in this day and age. And then you throw in the situation with COVID, and it must be near impossible as an independent, unless you're Notre Dame, of course. So pretty devastating situation. When you live in Connecticut, we don't have any professional sports teams here. So it's really UConn. So it's a pretty big blow to the people of the state.
No question about it. With let's talk COVID. How are you handling that COVID? And then we were just talking about this, and I'll add to what we were talking about. But you guys had the obviously the storm, and those of us on the East Coast and our particular case, the Southeast, we hear about our area, but you guys got hit too, right?
Yeah, we did. Typically Connecticut tends to avoid these major storms. But for some reason, this storm really affected us pretty badly here. I live in Middletown, Connecticut, and our town in particular really got hit pretty hard. Lots of downed trees and power lines. I'm still without power, a few days later, which is never a fun experience. So just hoping that we can get it together here and get the power back, within the next 24 hours. But it's been a pretty difficult couple of days here.
All right. Well, Bubba, I guess I thought he was going to ask a question, but he must have it on mute, not realize it. But Matt, as far as we talk about COVID-19 and the like, how are you handling that with, I know with all the, obviously I'm in my living room right now, but I was stopped at a gas station yesterday. I'll tell myself now, and I had to use the bathroom really bad. And I got to the door and realized, oh my God, I don't have my mask. I had to walk all the way back to my vehicle, all the way back in. But it's, I'm trying so hard being working with COVID-19 myself on my day job, and then with that. But how are you guys making it there in UConn? Well, not UConn, but in Connecticut rather.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been very difficult. I have two young kids, and it's been tough on them. In particular, to be at home for this longer period of time. It's been tough on work. Just like it's affected so many people around the country. So it's been a very difficult situation. We did start baseball here in Connecticut for my son about a month ago, which is great because it really gets the kids engaged again. It gets them, participating in athletics, which I think is really important for the kids. And my daughter started her dance again. So it's nice to kind of get things going again. We're moving in the right direction. The state in general is actually doing as well as any state in the country, believe it or not. I think right now we have under 60 people hospitalized. At one point we were close to 3,000. So the state is doing fantastic. But I think, we're all just hoping for normalcy as soon as possible. And most importantly, I really want to have a college football season. So hopefully we can, hopefully this virus will go away soon enough.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll certainly talk more about that later on as far as the 2020 football season and the prospects for the Pirates. But kind of shifting gears a little bit, take us back to the early 90s. I know you were at East Carolina from 94 to 97, but just talk about your recruitment and how you ended up being a Pirate.
Absolutely, Bubba. So at that time, ECU was recruiting New Jersey pretty hard. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and ECU recruited Jersey pretty hard. I'm sure you guys will remember, obviously, some of the big names. Scott Harley, for one, he was in my class. I actually played against Scott in high school. He was right down the road at Neptune. Dan Gonzalez, who was actually Scott's teammate from New Jersey, and there were several other guys that came in during that time frame. So at that point, Doug Martin was recruiting New Jersey, who I'm sure you guys remember. He's now a head coach at New Mexico, and he's had quite a career. So Doug actually was recruiting New Jersey, and he came up and recruited me. And at that time, to be honest, I wasn't too familiar with ECU growing up in New Jersey, but I had heard great things. And I knew that a few years prior, that's when they had their dream season. I think they finished number 8 in the country. So that piqued my interest. And then I went down on a recruiting trip with my family and absolutely fell in love with it. Loved the campus, loved the atmosphere, really enjoyed the program and wanted to be a part of it. And it was a great decision. I'm happy it worked out that way.
So before we talk about your time as a Pirate, talk a little about your high school career, and did you play anything besides football?
I did. I played basketball as well, and I also ran track through the javelin. So I was pretty busy all year long. Basketball actually was my true love growing up. Absolutely loved basketball, but it just kind of worked out that football. I didn't grow to be 6'6" or 6'7", so football was the avenue for me. But yeah, I played sports all year round. I'm a big advocate of kids playing more than one sport. Yeah, as many as possible.
Yeah, specialization is something I certainly do not believe in. It happens far too much nowadays, and I do think there's a time for it. But when kids are young, they need to play everything they want to play, everything they're interested in.
I totally agree with that. You see so much specialization now, and you'll see some kids that just play, soccer all year long or baseball all year long, and and then from high school, some of those kids are burned out. So, I'm a big believer in hey, when you're young, if you want to play soccer, you play soccer. If you want to play football, you play football, and you try it all and you see what you really like. And then at some point, you need to whittle it down to maybe 2. But I am a big believer in that.
And kids and parents are having to make decisions that they shouldn't have to make sometimes, but because of that, they're feeling pressure from different angles, and that's something that, especially at an age, like 8, 9, 10 years old, that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You have to let kids be kids and let them find their own way. So I agree with that. There's a little too much pressure on these kids nowadays that I don't think we had that when we were growing up, back in the 80s. I think it's just so much different now. We would play town sports and rec sports. Now everything is AAU based. It's all travel based, big money to participate. And with that comes more pressure. So it's just a very different world. And you see that in high school athletics now where, high school basketball players in particular, their main attraction is AAU, really, oftentimes, versus their high school team.
Right. And you a moment ago, you referenced Scott Harley and Dan Gonzalez, of course, being out of Neptune. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You probably recall Luke Fisher. Wasn't he from New Jersey as well?
Yes, Luke actually was. I think he was from South Jersey. He actually was before me, though. So I don't recall the town he was from. But he was actually, I think he graduated the year before I came in. But he was a Jersey guy. Lots of Jersey guys came through the program.
Yeah, Luke Fisher, he was 87 to 91, but even though he was 2 or 3 years ahead of you, I figured that you were familiar with him.
Absolutely. I remember Luke from, correct me if I'm wrong, he had the winning touchdown catch in the Peach Bowl, correct?
Right, and he had about, I think, 12 catches that day. It was a career day for him in more ways than one.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So, talking about your recruitment a little more, give us a glimpse behind the scenes. What was Coach Logan like on the recruiting trail back there in the early 90s? I guess that was year 3 for him in 1994.
Yeah, that's a good question. The funny thing about Coach Logan was he was a very straight shooter. He was basically going to tell you exactly how it was. There was no sugarcoating anything, like in terms of, hey, if you come to ECU, you're going to start from day one. There was none of that. It was, you're going to come to ECU and you're going to work hard, and you're going to put the time in, you're going to put the work in, and you're going to get your opportunity at some point. But there were no false promises. He was always a very straight shooter, which kind of took me a little bit by surprise, because when we had talked about some other schools that were recruiting me, he said, "No, I'm not going to recruit against those schools." He's like, "If you want to come to ECU, then we're not going to recruit against them." He said, "This is the place to be," and he just kind of put it out there. He was, he was not one to hold back his words, as you guys know very well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I work with him some on the Bubba. Bubba knows I've worked with him, and I always talk about this. I love Coach Logan, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm being sad, and he was the coach when I was there at East Carolina, so he will always have a special place in my heart there. But the funny thing about Coach Logan, and I think I've told the story. If I haven't, I'll tell it. If people didn't hear it, they can hear me now. I'm telling. But basically, when we were doing the radio show with Coach Logan in the middle to late '90s, he always was great behind the scenes and joked around. And as soon as that red light came on and it said on air, it was like John Wayne. It was like this. His eyes were different. And our good friend Alan Powell, Pirate Al, that comes on our show, he would call in different ones. Kyle from LaGrange, different people. And it was funny because he would be joking around. All of a sudden, somebody would ask him a question. He goes, I don't know, Al. What do you? And I was like, wow, that's a complete contrast of the public persona of Steve Logan versus behind the scenes. And now that he has a radio show, he is like the real Steve Logan everybody gets to see. So I was going to ask you, Matt, a nice segue there. Is that something did you guys see the funny side of Coach Logan and the serious side with practice?
Yeah, I mean, 99% of the time it was the serious side back then. Like, he was in the prime of his career as a head coach, and he was trying to win games, and he was all about winning. I mean, he did some great things at East Carolina, but he was all about winning. And yeah, sure, he would have his moments where he would joke around, and but I think being on the defensive side of the ball, I spent a little less time with him. He was primarily with the offensive guys, and every now and then his sense of humor would come out. But he was business. He was about winning and working hard. So, but yeah, I have heard his radio show, and I do. It's funny. I see a different personality there.
Right.
He's obviously known for his Loganisms or his one-liners, and I was watching something. I guess it was last night. Had an interview with Jeff Cars from the '99 season, and he was just talking about Coach Logan's one-liners. So I know I'm putting you on the spot here, Matt, but do you recall any one-liners from Coach Logan's or from your time that Coach Logan may have said?
Well, I couldn't repeat them on this show. The ones in practice. I couldn't repeat them. I don't want to get you guys in trouble, but there were some interesting ones. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything in particular, any particular lines, that he would come out with. But there were quite a few that he would throw out there. So sorry, I'm on the spot here. I can't think of any in particular. But he was never one to not have a strong message and strong opinion. That's for sure.
So coming in 1994, a lot of guys, especially in the trenches like that, red shirt, but you, however, did not. I know we had some injuries. Actually, I sent you earlier today the Coach Logan show after that 1994 South Carolina game, and I just watched a little bit of it, and he was talking about how Walter Scott and Willie Brookins were out with injuries for several weeks. So just talk about that chance you got to play early.
Yeah, that was, that was something that, I came in, I was really young. I think I played my first college game at 17 against Duke. I was very young. I had the mentality to play, but honestly, physically, I was a little light. But we were in a situation that year where I was actually Morris Foreman's primary backup. So for my first 2 years, I was backing up Morris, who you guys know very well, an all-time Pirate. And we had some injuries that year, and I was sort of in a situation where I was, I had to get out there and play. And, really primarily, mostly because of depth, reasons like you see oftentimes in college football. So I had a chance to play early, a lot of special teams my first year and as a backup on defense. Injuries are unfortunately a big part of it. But one thing about that team and our coaching staff and, having Coach Connors too, who always had us ready to go. And we were able to sort of work through those injuries and it was next man up. So Walter Scott was a great player. You can never replace a Walter Scott, but that's the mentality we had. It was next man up. And if somebody went down, you just keep rolling with it.
So that 94 season, Pirates really turned a corner under Coach Logan, getting back to a bowl game after a couple of losing seasons in his first 2 years at the helm, one of which Marcus Crandall went down a couple games into the season in 93 against UCF. So just talk about what are your memories of that season, being a true freshman in Division I college football. I know we went down to Auburn. Those guys had something like a 20 or 22 game win streak, and we gave them everything. Gave them everything they wanted. Had that 56-42 win at South Carolina, and some really good moments.
Yeah, that was an interesting year. We went 7-5, and we really had an opportunity to win 9 games. I mean, we were pretty close in a few other games there. So that team was close, but it was sort of early on in its progression. But it was a great year. In particular, that Auburn game is one of my favorite memories from college football. I think they were number 3 in the country when we went down there. And Stephen Davis, you guys remember Stephen Davis, played for the Redskins for a long time. He was the running back, and he was a big boy at running back. He was probably 240 pounds. That was a great memory. I remember there were about 85,000 people, and you're coming out of the tunnel, and you see the eagle, the war eagle, and it's flying around the stadium, and the crowd is chanting "Tiger Meat." 85,000 people chanting "Tiger Meat," and I specifically remember that. And what a rush! That's all I can say. It was a great rush, fantastic memory, and we played really well that day. We had opportunities, a few things we just didn't capitalize on, but it was a closer game than most people expected.
Yeah, it really was, and it was some of your former teammates. Maybe it was the Hart twins, and also maybe Marvin Burke, who we've had on the program, and they were talking about their memories. I'd actually forgotten about this. Coach Logan was pretty animated. Maybe, I don't know, Terry Bowden trying to stretch it out a little bit there at the end, cover the spread, or make it look not as close like you were saying. But do you recall that? I don't think Coach Logan and Terry Bowden shook hands after that one.
Well, I could definitely see the competitive side of Coach Logan not appreciating that. I think, my guess looking back on it is they were number 3 in the country, and they were trying to win some style points there, and probably did some things they shouldn't have in those final moments. And I'm sure Coach Logan didn't appreciate it. I'm sure none of our coaches did. But yeah, the game was closer than it appeared, and even though we didn't pull it out, it was a proud feeling we had of the team to go in there and compete really hard. And then we had some other opportunities that year where we were very close. You mentioned the South Carolina game. That was an offensive explosion. Junior Smith, if I recall, went nuts. Marcus Crandall went nuts. Larry Shannon and I think Mitch Galloway had some long touchdowns. So that was an explosion of offense and a fun game. I remember that really well.
Yeah, Mitch Galloway, he was from down there in Bennettsville, South Carolina. So I know how sweet that was for him to go into Williams-Brice Stadium and have what may have been a career day at that point.
I'll tell you guys, Mitch Galloway was the toughest guy I've ever had to cover one-on-one in my life. In the slot, so where I played linebacker, he was always lined up in a slot. And oftentimes I would spread out and line up, over the slot receiver. And in practice, he was so quick. And I think a very underrated ECU receiver, but he was so quick in and out of his cuts. He was in a one-on-one situation against a linebacker, very, very difficult to cover. So he was a great, great player. And sometimes in practice, he would joke around and say, this is where I'm going. And he was just so quick. You just couldn't, even if you knew, you couldn't even keep up with the guy. He was just, a special talent out there.
Yeah, he really was. And that's what Coach Logan was obviously so good at identifying a way to create a mismatch. And I remember when he would put Mitch Galloway, whether it was the 96 game against Miami or also that 96 game against NC State and Charlotte, he would line Mitch up beside either Marcus in the event of the Miami game or also Danny against NC State. And like you're saying, he would get him one-on-one with the linebacker, and the linebacker had no chance.
Yeah, that's game over right there. That's not happening. So I'm sure that's a matchup we were trying to get often. And then you throw in some of the other guys we had out there. I mean, we had some real speed guys like Jarris McPhail, who was a 4.4 40 guy, maybe even 4.3, if I recall. But we had some speed guys. We had some shifty guys, and a lot of guys that were maybe passed up on by other schools that had amazing careers at East Carolina.
Matt, that was the thing I was going to talk about. Is you guys there was a lot of talent on that team. There was a lot of winners on that team. And talk about how close you guys were, because it seemed like that time of, I know that it's because Logan built, the culture and all that, but you guys seem to be, during that middle to late 90s, a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty special time. And, my favorite part of playing on those teams was the mentality that they had. The mentality that we had was, regardless of where we were playing or who we were playing, or whatever the spread was, the mentality was to win. The mentality was to go win and take care of business. And nobody on that team backed down from a challenge. That was kind of instilled in us from our coaching staff. I always give Coach Connors a lot of credit. He was really tough on us, but he instilled that mentality. And the great thing about those teams was, regardless of who you play, you go into Auburn, you go into Tennessee, you go into the Orange Bowl. The expectation was to win, and oftentimes we did, and so it was a lot of fun. Like I said, it was a special time in the history of the program. Those 3 or 4 years there, certainly some good memories. Yeah.
And the great thing of Coach Logan, he always reminded people about the national media or local media during that time about how great you guys were, and he would. What was that game, Bubba, we were watching? You showed us that clip of. Where he got on the person, one of the media, talking about how many wins that our guys have had. We were watching that several weeks ago. I was trying to remember, but he was talking in that very thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall.
It was middle to late 90s. But anyway, you guys, for Coach Logan, I think Coach has 56 wins, Bubba? It's the all-time. He's number one on the list with 56 wins.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's something like that. It's they're in the low 50s.
I'll tell you guys, it was nothing better than when you put on ESPN and the pundits were saying you had no chance or you were a big underdog, and that was something that team embraced. That was actually a good thing for us, I think, as a team, because if you said to some of the guys, hey, if there's a Lee Corso or somebody like that on ESPN who's saying, hey, the Pirates are going into the Orange Bowl, they're a 17-point dog, they have no chance to win this game, that was just something that motivated that group of guys. And that's something that I'm hoping our guys today on these teams today can embrace, because they're going to be underdogs quite a bit. I think for one more year, I still think, maybe for one more year, they're going to be in that underdog type role. But I hope that they embrace that, because there's nothing better than being the dog when everybody counts you out and then you go in and you take care of business and you win a game.
No question about it. Speaking of dogs, there's our dog. Is Kyle from the LaGrange.
What's going on, guys?
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, Kyle, how you doing?
I'm doing, man. I'm doing.
Yeah, we're talking to Matt Semenza here. For those of you that just joining us here with 50 Pirates in 50 Days, Logan era, with Matt and Matt. Let's talk about some of the your coaches as far as position coaches. One of the guys I loved, all those guys are in there, but James Webster had. I know that I was working with Henry Hinton at the time, and he told James he came. I think it was a Brian Bailey show. He came one night and he said, "Man, you could do radio. Your voice is so deep." But he had a great voice. I remember that.
He did have a deep voice. You definitely couldn't miss him on the practice field when he was yelling at you. I can tell you that for sure.
Also, let's talk about with the fall camp that just started the end of last week. Can you talk about the practices? How tough were they under Logan?
Very tough. At that time you could have 3-a-days, and we would have 3 practices a day with a weight room session in between, and then film room study early in the morning and then after. So you're talking about some really long days. And like I always joke around, you talk about the Junction Boys and Bear Bryant. They had nothing on those teams. I can tell you that. Like 3-a-days in that North Carolina heat with weight room in between was brutal. Obviously, you can't do that anymore for safety reasons, but back then it was a little different. I'll tell you guys, I can recall one player in particular who lost 14 pounds of water weight in one day on a very hot 3-a-day day. So
was that
they were
you?
tough. It was not me, thank God. It was not me,
Okay.
thank God. But it was definitely a different mentality. The NCAA allowed you to do more back then. It's a lot more regulated now. But after those days, you knew you were in a battle for sure. So, and those teams were always prepared to play. I think as a result of that, when that season opener came around, those teams were ready to go.
Yeah, joining late. I know you played under Logan. What years?
So I was there for 94 through 97.
Okay. So both Liberty Bowls.
Some of the great years.
Yeah, both Liberty Bowls and the 96 season where we should have been in a bowl. And,
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of great wins.
Hey, Kyle, ask him about one of your favorite games.
Exactly.
The one that Matt as well is trying to get his hands on, that Wake Forest game in 97.
Oh, you're trying to get your hands on that one too? Yes. The 1997 game, Wake Forest, East Carolina. I was unable to go to that game, and it was televised by Fox Sports South. And we did not have Fox Sports South yet where I lived. We still had HTS, Home Team Sports.
Yep, sure did.
And so I didn't get to see the game because I wasn't there, and I didn't have Fox Sports South. So I listened to it, and it was the first ACC opponent to come to Dottie Ficklen since the 60s. So what are your memories of that Wake Forest game? And if you get your hands on it, please let me know.
Yeah, that game was tough. My memory is we were down in the fourth quarter. I think Rod Coleman had a big strip sack, which led to a quick turnaround score. I think we recovered the ball maybe inside their 15-yard line, and 1 or 2 plays later, we scored. And I'm not sure if that was the go-ahead touchdown or not, but I know we were down pretty big in the fourth quarter, and we came back. We were very sloppy in the first half. We had some turnovers, made some mistakes. But in the fourth quarter, I just remember the team really, turned it on. Like I said, that strip sack Rod had really turned the game around. That was a big play, and we were able to get the win. I think we won by 1 point, if I recall.
Yeah,
I remember that game. Yeah, I remember that game because it was. Yeah, I was just going to say I remember that game very well because that was the opponent we played the very first game of Ficklin Stadium was Wake Forest, and they were making a big deal about how, like Bubba said, it had been a long. I guess that had been that was the first time. Was it the first time the ACC opponent since that time? It'd been a long time, right?
Yeah, that's what Kyle was saying a moment ago.
Yeah,
62.
yeah. And I remember the media talking about that, and just being a young kid, barely. I was brand new to radio, only a year at that time, and I used to have to take a tape recorder called a Marantz, and I would have to run down from the press box to the press conference and record it, talk to some players, and run it back up to the press box, the double wide in the sky, as it's was affectionately known. And but I remember the media. The reason I brought that up is I remember the media making a big deal about the ACC and how they hadn't played there, Wake Forest being the first opponent, and how the Pirates had battled their way back. It was a really cool game and a very special day, and especially for a young broadcaster like myself, I really enjoyed that game.
Yeah, it was a fun day, and the ACC hates to come to Dowdy Ficklin. Yeah, I wish we could get them there more often. I do, and also since you mentioned it, Dave, thank God the double wide trailer in the sky is officially gone. That was
I don't
a
know
nice
about
tour.
that. I don't know about that. We wasted a lot of money on that press box.
Yeah, well, it certainly looks good.
Well, that's the thing. It didn't have to, like Kyle's saying, it didn't necessarily have to be $67 or $68 million, but we could have. It certainly, like you're saying, Matt, needed to be replaced. I just wish it would have been replaced, maybe 40, 45, 50 million, where we could have used some of that other 20 million or so to have a very nice indoor practice facility and a training table.
Well, we can have that. It's a matter of putting the plan out there, say we're going to have it, and then people will start donating money. At some point, we can't wait. If we wait 30 years to pay that press box off, then it'll be probably 10 or 15 more items before we've got to find a way to literally sometimes, guys, you got to find a way to make it happen. If my kids need braces or they need anything, I make it happen even when I don't have the money. So sometimes you have to
making things happen, guys. Stick around. Don't want to involve our guest in the discussion for our roundtable afterwards, but just stick around, listeners.
Why can't Matt stay?
Oh, Matt can stay. I don't want to make him guilty by association.
That's up to him.
It's all good, guys. I mean, to be honest, I think that the way college athletics is going, there needs to be such an emphasis on amenities for these players now. So, I think that should have been a bigger focus. To be perfectly honest, I'll be very honest about that. Focus on the players, and that indoor practice facility is a must. We have to have it. In Eastern North Carolina, you have to have that. So there you go. That's my opinion on it.
I remember 2 years ago
right.
Yeah, actually, the thing's been 3 years ago now. It was 2017. Mose, that would have been Coach Montgomery's second season. There was 9 afternoons in this time of the year for the fall camp, 9, where there was an afternoon storm that they couldn't practice. So for people that act like it's not like we're trying to give luxury items for players, we live in a time where we have social media, where we can broadcast on social media, where these players are even more educated because they have more resources, more things. And when they see that you have an indoor practice facility, when they see all the amenities, we may not be Clemson or Alabama like some people, but we're still big time. And I hope that hopefully people will, in our administration and certainly coaches, everyone will treat us like we're big time. That's the way I feel.
No doubt we are. Not to harp on the press box, but it's just, it's a shame that our previous administration was so worried about pleasing certain alumni and, the way things appeared, and just wasted money on something that could have been done for $20 million, did it for $65 million. And, that money, like Bubba said, could have went to an indoor practice facility. The training table, to me, we're almost there. We have a nutritionist, or nutritionist, however you say it. We have somebody to provide meals for the team now, but it's
cookout for me. So, well, for me personally, that very thing is that we have to look at when that press box was built in '78. and they put towards the end of Pat Dye's career, and they're with the Pirates. They put a new scoreboard up that stayed up there for a million years, but it took them 40 years to replace that press box. That's the problem, is they waited way too long to replace the press box, and so what happened is they were kind of caught behind the 8 ball of the cost of it, and then they did a bad job of having where the too many things, and where, like Bubba said, they could have had it way cheaper. And by the way, Memphis, they had an indoor practice facility they've just built for only $8 million, so it can be done really nice. It doesn't have to be 30 or 40 million. That would be nice, but at least to have something there. Something's better than nothing, especially if you go ahead and tell. Right now, all we have for our football team and basketball team especially is hope. And if we got to sell the future, and if you can't right now, people aren't going to give money right now until it's kind of like a wait and see for people. It's a matter of trust, and they don't trust. And so the way that they will trust,
Dave, we don't even have anybody running the Pirate Club.
Yeah, we're a chancellor right now, so hopefully we'll have those two positions filled here sometime in 2020. I know it's COVID. We've got a lot of. That's the bad thing, is we had 7 years of tough times, and then we had COVID-19 in the back, to hit us in the spring. So you've had a lot. We are Pirates, and we have the different storms, and hopefully we can get through this one. It's been a tough time, but certainly one thing, Matt, that you know very well is about winning, and that I know that helps certainly with a lot of things. People will start giving once Coach Houston's next third season, like you said. It was cool that you said that earlier. The third season's when things are going to really start rocking for Mike Houston and staff.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm a big believer in Mike Houston. I really like what he's doing with the program. If you look at the roster, just compared to a year ago to where we were, the size difference it's like night and day. I mean, he's done a great job bringing in some big bodies on the O-line and the D-line. The previous administration, we really, when Mike Houston came into this program, there was no depth to speak of. I mean, let's face it, there was no depth to speak of. We were very thin on both lines. So I love his focus, and that he prioritized bringing in some big bodies that can really play. I think that was the most important thing he had to do. I really like the coaching staff he's put together. I'm a big fan of Donnie Kirkpatrick. I really think the future is bright. Looking at this year, I read all the sports magazines, and we might not be at the point where we're going to win a ton of games, but I could tell you guys this, I'm very confident. We're going to score a ton of points this year. We're going to score a ton of points. We might give up a lot of points. I think we're about a year away on the defensive side of the ball, but we're going to score a lot of points. And I'll tell you, if you look at the little stat I looked at last night, if you look at the first 5 games of the season last year, and let's throw away Gardner-Webb, okay? Let's just take them out of the equation. But we averaged 15.2 points for the first 5 games. If you look at the last 6, we averaged 32.8. So Holton started to mature. Donnie Kirkpatrick started to get that offense rolling. He started to learn who his weapons were. And I think this year you're going to see a continuation of that. I expect some big things from the offense.
That's an excellent point, Matt. And I remember seeing those numbers myself last year. And the thing about it is the schedule at the beginning of the season, we played NC State, who ended up not being particularly good themselves. But like you're saying, those numbers we put up, over twice as many points in the final 7 games of the season, and it's against much better competition.
Sure was. That game against UCF Cincinnati, which is a game we should have won. That game, we had it. We really had that game. I felt like that was a tough loss. I think we put up, 51 on SMU down in Dallas. Unfortunately, we gave up 58. But you could see the production, and you could see Holton becoming more and more comfortable as the season went on in that offense, and some of the young receivers. I really like some of the young receivers we have, guys like Snead, and I think Hatfield has a lot of explosion. C.J. Johnson. I think we have a lot of weapons there to work with. So I really feel like this year there's going to be some fireworks. God willing, we have a season. So we'll see.
Yeah, and it looks like with everything, looks like everything's will be pushed back. So we'll see about that. About maybe September the 12th for the first game against Marshall. We'll see about how that plays out. But things are not. I agree with Kyle. I know Kyle, you've said for a long time, which I agree with you. The things are going to be pushed back, and I feel like
Well,
they
yeah,
were.
I think they're going to be pushed back to the 12th because I'm waiting for the UNC schools to approach King Cooper about allowing games to be played without fans. Right now 25 people is the most that can be in a gathering out in public. So we would need to get a provision to play football games without fans prior to the 12th while we're still in phase 2. And I'm assuming that is going to happen. I'm assuming all the UNC schools are going to get together. UNC system schools are going to get together, and that provision will be passed. But, as you look today at Navy announcing Labor Day weekend game with BYU, and you look at Tulane and Southern Miss announced that they've scheduled a game for this year to fill up their open dates in their schedule. And Southern Miss scheduled another game against Tennessee Tech. And Middle Tennessee and Troy announced a home series for this year to fill up open dates. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, we're doing nothing. We're doing nothing. We have an athletic director, and guys, you know how notorious I am for the Jeff Confer thing, and I like Gilbert. I'm not knocking Gilbert, but I don't know what he's doing. We need. We're going to play the season unless the state of North Carolina says we can't play because of the NCAA ruling last night saying that divisions can choose to play. They did not cancel fall sports. Now, that didn't directly affect FBS. FBS championship is controlled by the NCAA. But what it did, it gave the FBS the go-ahead to proceed without having to look bad because NCAA didn't cancel fall championships. So that means we're going to play football. There will be FBS football. The only thing that may keep us from playing is if the state of North Carolina doesn't allow it. So we need to proceed forward at East Carolina administration, please listen, as if we're playing football. And if our conference mates are going to be adding games to play 12, like Navy done, like Tulane's done, if the rest of the conference is going to be doing that, then we need to be doing the same.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that I was talking to Bubba earlier, and Matt, we had Garrett McClintock on from the BYU 24/7 site a couple days ago on Tuesday night, and they had 6 games they lost. They lost half their season being an independent, right? And it feels like my thing is right now, it feels like that we need 6 games, and the reality is we only need 2. We need 2 ball games. And here's the thing. The way things are right now, just go ahead and say we have those games with whoever you're talking to. Just go ahead and sign on maybe you haven't signed on the dotted line yet. Everybody understands that right now things are.
I don't think we're talking to anybody, Dave. I don't think we're talking to anybody. What I would like, even if we don't play 12, we need to play 11. If we're going to push that Marshall game back to the 12th in hopes that we can have fans, then I say schedule a road game for Labor Day weekend. Go play on the road. I mean, I don't understand what we're doing. I mean, and I'd like some answers. And I know we reached out, and hopefully John will be on the show here soon.
Maybe he will now. We'll see.
Maybe we'll get some answers. But no, look, I like John. John Gilbert's a great guy, but I don't like to sit around and be doing nothing. You never stay the same. You either move forward or move back. And if you're not moving forward and you're not planning, to play 12 games, if you're sitting there waiting, don't be reactive, be proactive.
Well, Matt, here's another thing, guys. And Matt, I'll bring you in on this too. As I was telling Bubba earlier, is that we've been given permission, thankfully, by the commissioner. He made the right decision of having the 8 conference games, 8 + 4. Since we're doing the math things now, 8 + 4. So the non-conference, basically, that you can play 12 games. So since we have the permission to play the 12 games, which is great because we are even though we're not called a Power 5 league, we are a power league. It allows us still to play Power 5 schools and allows us to play 12 games. what if, oh, by the way, I don't think this is going to happen. What if I told Bubba there's a small chance, what if we have a great season this year? And they go, oh, but you only played 10 games when the other conference mates played 12, or, other teams, you're not going to get in the bowl because you didn't play enough games, or who knows.
Most of the Power 5 leagues are playing 10 or 11, to be honest with you. But the Conference USA, the Sun Belt, the only leagues that announce they're playing 12 along with the American. And if there's a good reason that John Gilbert is sticking with 10 games, that's fine. I just want to hear the reason. Don't just say I'm comfortable at 10. We're going to be measured with everything. I want to know the reason why you're comfortable at 10. Why are we staying at 10? Is it because, is it a cost thing? If we're not going to, are you concerned we're not going to have fans? So you don't want to schedule any more home games than you have to because you're not going to make any money off of them. That's fine. But then why aren't we going on the road?
I think, East Carolina fans, they want football. Those coaches want to play as many games as possible. The players want to play. It's a shame that we lost Norfolk State, I believe, off the schedule.
And
South Carolina, which, not to get off topic, but I'm hoping they do come to Dowdy-Ficklin next year as scheduled, as promised for many times now. That doesn't seem to ever happen.
Thank you.
So we need to get South Carolina there. But it's a shame that we did lose those 2 games. And I can tell you, those players right now, especially the guys who are seniors, that's disappointing. These guys want to play football. So we need to go out there and find those games. I agree.
And I hear North Carolina, I don't know why they had some non-conference games scheduled, but it appears they're still looking for their non-conference game. Is that right, Bubba?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that.
You're a politician?
Yeah, I saw today that North Carolina seems to
be
looking
we're
for
having
one.
trouble getting North Carolina to get back on the schedule. Let's go tell them, hey, we'll go to Chapel Hill this year and be your sacrificial lamb, if you will. And you just need to give us a home game down the road. We'll go there this year. You give us a home game sometime in the next 10 years. And that's the way to get them back on the schedule. Turn this negative into a positive. Get North Carolina back into Dowdy-Ficklin by being willing to go there this year.
There you go.
I think that's a big thing. We need these teams to come to Greenville, and there's been a real reluctance for you see it in the last few years with Virginia Tech now. With that series canceling, it's very difficult to get these teams. And our fans, we deserve to get ACC opponents and even SEC opponents into Dowdy-Ficklin.
Yeah, no doubt.
Very, very, very important.
Yeah, we have the very fact. We'll get to your career in just a second, Matt. Back. We'll get back on track. But as far as these talking heads on these radio shows and television shows, I'm really angry to hear. I want to get your take on this, and we'll get back to your career. All these guys now talking about, well, the group of 5. Well, this is a perfect time for them to break away. I'm like, no, we are a power league, and can you imagine? I haven't even talked to the guys on the air about this, but can you imagine not having North Carolina State, maybe one day again having Virginia Tech when things cool down? Maybe not so many years in a row, whatever, but there's a lot of schools in ACC and Power 5 leagues that we would never be able to play again. So that, it's crazy.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's a shame. It's crazy talk that you hear. This is a power league. You look at UCF, you look at Cincinnati, you look at Houston, Temple, South Florida, Memphis. I mean, there are good teams in this league. Navy. This is a power football league. So I mean, the idea of breaking away is absurd, and I just hope it never happens. But you can see the NCAA seems to be moving in that direction.
Well, that's the problem. NCAA has no control over the FBS at all. They're letting the autonomous 5 control everything and call all the shots.
Right.
Matt, earlier we talked about guys like Willie Brookins and Walter Scott, but Morris Foreman, Rod Coleman, EMAC, who we've had on the program, so much talent there in the mid-'90s, some of the best defenses East Carolina has ever fielded, no doubt about it. So talk about some of your memories and defense coordinator Paul Jett.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I was actually Morris Foreman's primary backup for 2 years. So I learned a lot from watching Morris. As a matter of fact, I was in every day in the film room with two of the all-time greats, Morris, rest in peace, Morris Foreman, and also Dave Hart. We were in the same meeting room together. And, Morris was outside linebacker. Dave Hart was a strong safety. You talk about two great players that I had a chance to watch, as a younger guy. Those guys were, they were – Dave Hart would always bring the wood, as you guys know. If he had a chance to hit somebody, he would do it as an undersized guy. And Morris was the type of guy who was just always in the right position. If there was a play to be made, he would make it. And, how many linebackers do you see that also return punts in college football? And he did that. I don't know if you guys remember, Morris Foreman returned punts as a linebacker. So, he was a great talent. We had a lot of guys that had, went on to the NFL and had some very good careers. And as a player, it was just nice to be around those guys and be a part of that.
Yeah, like you're saying, Morris Foreman, I think he'd been an option quarterback at Farmville Central in '91, and then he came in as a true freshman in '92, was returning kickoffs, and later in his career, like you were saying, return punts as well. I remember a game, you remember the '95 game up at Army, and I think he had 3 turnovers that day, maybe a fumble recovery and a couple of picks.
I remember that well. He had an incredible game that day. And that's textbook. When you want to play the option, if you want to look at how a linebacker can play, you go back and watch that film because he had a great game, and I do remember that. The number 7, you can't forget the number 7 out there. Absolutely.
With that '95 season, obviously the theme was unfinished business because of the 30-0 Liberty Bowl loss to Illinois that previous season. So just give us a glimpse behind the scenes and the commitment to that mantra of unfinished business.
Yeah, I mean that first Liberty Bowl against Illinois was a rough game. They had Simeon Rice, who was virtually unblockable on the edge, and he gave us some major problems that day. As he went on to give every NFL team, for many years, major problems with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers too. Great player, but that was a pretty humiliating loss, to be honest with you, in that first bowl game. And that team really took it upon itself to get to work in the off season and to get better. And it's pretty interesting that we made it back to the same bowl game the following year and had a chance to play Stanford on a very, I don't know if you guys were there, but that was a cold day. That was a very cold day. And I think Stanford, I want to say they had the top offense in the Pac-12 that year. And they were more of a throwing team. And I think we got them in the cold weather. The defense played fantastic. And offense, they did just enough, and we were able to pull out. I think it was 19-14.
Brad Holcomb had a good game.
Yes, he did. He did. So it was a huge turnaround. And you don't see that very often where you lose a bowl game and then the following year you go back and have an opportunity to win it. So that team was able to pull it off.
On the way to making it to that Liberty Bowl in '95, there was a stop in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, on a Saturday night. And what do you remember about that game? It was always tough when we played the Golden Eagles, always hard-hitting games. And, of course, that was the fake field goal penalty, then kick the field goal for the win.
I remember that game very well. Very well. The funny thing about Hattiesburg is that their stadium, the way it's set up, their fans are about 3 feet from the bench. And I just remember getting heckled all night long by fans. Every time you'd come off, just getting cursed out. Those fans were pretty ruthless down there. They let you have it. So it was a tough environment. Southern Miss at that time was an excellent team. Yeah. And when you played Southern Miss, it was a tough physical game. Probably the most physical team we played, in my opinion. They were putting out at that time a lot of NFL players. So I remember it very well. I remember the trick play at the end. We were able to get out of there with a win. That was a huge game. And really, honestly, that was a hell of a call by our coaching staff to call that play. I mean, you don't see that kind of call very often in college football.
Yeah, fake field goal. The win is rare. One thing I don't think I've ever seen, and this is just a random football question for both of you guys. Has either one of you ever seen a fake PAT for a 2-point conversion for a win? Like at the end of a game when they, you think you're sitting up overtime, and instead of kicking the PAT, you fake it and go for 2?
Seems like at some point maybe, but yeah, it's certainly not coming to mind right offhand.
Seems like that would happen at some point. Coach Houston, if you're watching.
But like you're saying, Kyle and Matt, with that fake field goal that Coach Logan pulled out that night, off like a 49-yard field goal, and then we got 15 yards closer, and I think it was a 44-yard field goal, and then it ended up being a 29-yard for the game winner. But just unbelievable to fake it in that situation. That's the only time I remember a field goal really being faked that I can recall right offhand. In that situation, where the game was on the line.
At East Carolina or just in general?
I know it's happened, but I don't recall any other games as much as I recall things like that.
Not at East Carolina. I remember one Michigan State faked a field goal against Notre Dame for the Vic a couple years ago with D'Antonio. Okay,
yeah. When I think of Michigan State and special teams plays at the end of the game, I think of the situation there at the big house when Michigan was punting. Yeah. And I told you I was on the way home from Greenville when we were at our buddy's house, Greg Burke in Raleigh, and just happened to walk in for a second to use the restroom and happened to catch that play before we hit the road. And,
yeah, we beat Tulsa that day. I came home and turned that game on TV to watch the last 5 minutes of it, and was glad I did.
But Matt, getting back to your time, that '96 season, obviously that was shortly before we were accepted into Conference USA. So just talk about that, having such a stellar year as we referenced briefly early on, going 8-3, and then not even be able to go to a bowl game.
I tell you, I think that might have been our best team, honestly. I mean, that was a fantastic team, and really frustrating to this day that we didn't have an opportunity to go to a bowl game, because that was a tremendous team, and a special year. You talk about Southern Miss. That season in '96, we played Southern Miss on a Thursday night ESPN game at home, and just really played terrible. I mean, we just couldn't get out of our own way, and we dropped that game at home on a Thursday night. That was a painful loss that I remember very well.
Was Lee Roberts? Was Lee Roberts the quarterback here?
That's correct. Lee Roberts. Yep. And Jeff Bauer was coaching.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, so that was a Thursday night loss. The following week, we went down to the Orange Bowl and played Miami, and we were a big underdog. Miami, I want to say Miami was number 10 or number 11 in the country, and they came out and scored the first touchdown. And after that, I want to say we scored about 30 straight. That's and right. Just really put it on them that night in the Orange Bowl in a big way. And that's one of my favorite memories, from my time there. Those players on Miami were so frustrated that night. I'll never forget, there was one player, he was spitting on our players through his helmet. He was so frustrated because we were running on him, we were throwing on him, just pounding the rock with Scott Harley that night, I remember. And that was a fun game. There was a pretty big party back in Greenville after that one. Very, very memorable night.
Got a funny story about that game. We were blowing out Miami, like you said, and in the fourth quarter, I picked up the phone, and I don't remember what the score was at that point. It may have been whatever the final was, 31-7 or whatever the final score was. And I called my stepdad, my former stepdad, and he was in Durham at the time. And I called him and said, "Are you watching the East Carolina game?" And he said, "Well, we went out to dinner. I just got home. Let me turn it on. And, how bad's Miami beating them?" And his response was, "Whoa, Miami is blowing them out. I thought they would at least be competitive." I said, "Bobby, you're looking at the score upside down." He couldn't register in his brain that East Carolina would be blowing out Miami that big. He thought Miami was blowing out East Carolina 31-7 or whatever the score was.
Yeah, I think a lot of people around the country were very surprised that night. No doubt about it. I could tell you a lot of people in Vegas lost some big money on that game, I'm sure.
Several weeks ago, we had a watch party where we rewatched that game. Did you happen to see that? We had Snoop Wallace, Tabari Wallace on, and then I want to say Danny Moore and at least 2 or 3 others.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that, unfortunately, but I have gone back and watched that game on YouTube over the years, and that was just a complete performance, from top to bottom. That's the type of performance that, you don't get many times in your career where everything clicks just right on the right night. And that was just one of those nights. And, I'm convinced that, that game, it was no fluke. If we had played that team 10 times, I think we win 7 out of 10 times. I think that was a very good team that year.
Yeah, there's been a couple times in East Carolina history where we were an underdog, and it seemed like there was nothing we could do wrong. That Miami game in '96, West Virginia in 2009 is another one that comes to mind. UNC in 2013 and 2014. Those moments like that where you're playing a quote unquote bigger opponent and you just can't be stopped. It's an awesome feeling.
Yeah, that North Carolina game where we hung 70 was a pretty awesome day. You can't really beat that, especially with the Tar Heels. So I agree.
Yeah, that West Virginia game in 08.
08, I said 09. Okay, yeah, 08, you are correct.
Yeah, unfortunately, that 09 game was up in Morgantown. It wasn't as much fun. I think we lost something like 31-17. That was a game. It was so frustrating. It seemed like we'd get something going, get down to the red zone, and then or stall out rather. But
yeah, that was 08. You're right. It was right after the Virginia Tech game. Bill Stewart's first year as head coach of the Mountaineers.
And Bubba Grant chiming in with the exclamation of Steve Logan. Yeah, Coach Logan obviously had a very successful run, especially there in the mid-90s. But so, Matt, we talked about it there at the beginning, but and we'll come back to your time after ECU here in just a moment. But we've brought up some memories, some favorite memories of ours, but what are some things that really stand out just from your perspective, and not necessarily being prompted by our memories?
Yeah, I think that was just like I said earlier, that was just a special time to be a part of that program. It was really, it was just some really good years. I was really fortunate to be a part of that during that time. Like I said, at that point, ECU was recruiting New Jersey pretty hard. And I wish they would get back to that a little bit, but that's a whole nother topic. But so I was fortunate enough to be recruited and come down there and be a part of that team. And some of I'll tell you, my favorite memories are going on the road. I love playing in Dowdy Ficklin, don't get me wrong, but going on the road as an underdog, I think that was something I enjoyed, going into places like Tennessee and playing against Peyton Manning. And we had a chance to play against some fantastic quarterbacks. We played against, over the span of 2 years, Dante Culpepper, Peyton, Mark Bolger, who went on to be an all-pro quarterback, and Donovan McNabb, who I think, in my opinion, was the best college quarterback that I ever saw. He was up close and personal. He was a beast, and he was a big guy that he could run it, he could throw it, he could run the option, and he could run you over, and he also had speed. So he was, all the quarterbacks I saw in college, I thought he was the best one I saw. So a lot of good memories there. Played against a lot of great players, and had some big wins.
What about talking about great quarterbacks? Help me out, guys. Was it Redmond who was quarterback at Louisville in '97?
Yes.
98, or am I getting my years mixed up?
Yeah, it was 98. I'm not sure if he was there in 97. I don't recall.
Graduated in
Yeah, Chris Redmond.
Yeah, I mean, that's a year late. Never mind. Forget I said anything.
Yeah, you're thinking that 98 game in Dowdy Ficklin where we lost 63-45.
Yes, exactly.
Trying to forget that one.
All I can see is our secondary and linebackers, you know, chasing those Louisville receivers on those shallow crossing routes all day long.
Yeah, no doubt.
I remember it well.
Were you graduated in '97, correct?
I did, but I was still in Greenville at that point, and I was actually on the sideline for that game. Okay. And that was a tough one. That was a tough day.
What do you remember about that Cincinnati game to close out the '97 season where we were playing? Or not close out the season. I'm sorry. It was late in the season in the rain at Dowdy Ficklin Stadium on a Thursday night where Cincy had a pretty good ball team that year, but we shut them down.
Yeah, that was I want to say that was senior night, which is always a fun night, and it's a pretty low scoring game. I want to say that was an ESPN game. That team that year, that '97 team, we struggled. We never really could find a rhythm. It was kind of up and down. It was a very choppy season. I want to say we lost 4 straight earlier in the year, and I think we finished the season on a 4-game win streak. And I think that was the last game I played in Dowdy Ficklin. So that was a good win for us. I think that there was a fight before the game at midfield during warmups. I think our team got into it with Cincinnati right at midfield, like 20 guys. So it was a pretty intense game.
Yeah, like you're saying, Matt, we were 1-5 to start that '97 season, then won 4 straight, and then had the opportunity to muster a winning season with a win at NC State. Unfortunately, came up just a little bit shy in a game that really came down to the wire. It was misleading. It was 37-24, but it was 24-24, and State was kind of they were driving and they punched it in, and then I want to say they either had a pick six or they returned an onside kick for a score or something to make it look a little more lopsided than what it was.
Yeah, Torrey Holt, I remember, had a long touchdown on a wide receiver screen. It was a short catch, and he took it to the house. That was a big play in that game that kind of turned the tide, I recall. And that's always miserable. You never want to lose to NC State. So that was a tough way to go out.
Am I remembering correctly? Did we lead that game going into the fourth quarter?
We may have, Kyle. It was either tied or maybe we did have the lead, but it was very close. Like I said, I think it was 24-24 before that final sequence there. But I remember that 75 or 80-yard screenplay to Torrey Holt that you referenced, because he scored in the end zone right where I was sitting. I was sitting about the 10 or 15-yard line, and I just remember him making a move and then him turning on the jets down the sideline.
Yeah. Great, another great player, Hall of Fame type player in the NFL. So,
another game from that '97 season that sticks out in my mind. We had a game at Houston at their old stadium there that was just an absolute shootout. I don't, maybe it was like 38-34, but it was like whoever had the ball last in the fourth quarter was going to win. You guys remember that game?
I do remember that, and I remember I want to say they were not in their normal stadium that year, and I remember it was a really tiny stadium we played in, and it was a shootout. A lot of points that night, and we pulled it out. Correct?
Yeah, you did. And what you're thinking of, they had been playing in the Astrodome, and that was the first year back on campus at the old
Robertson Stadium.
Yes, and it was before they were get ready to remodel it, and just hadn't done it yet, and so it was a dump. It was a dump that year.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Yeah, we won in an absolute shootout. That's a game, Bubba. You talk about games. I remember that game being televised locally. That's a game we need to find to add to our archive. That was a fun one to watch.
Yeah, it really was.
I'll give you guys a quick story you might appreciate. When we played at Illinois, I want to say it was '96. We lost that game 7-0. There before the game, our locker room had flooded. There was a flood in the locker room. There was probably 2 feet of water. So we got dressed in the tunnel, and we had our pregame in the tunnel. And to this day, I'm pretty sure that was not accidental.
Yeah, 95. That would not surprise me. I can't imagine how else the locker room would flood. I've been to Champaign-Urbana. There's not a lot of water around there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was something behind that.
Yeah, because I remember the game day. I remember it was a beautiful day for football. Had it rained on Friday at all or anything? Like I think
apparently it was a burst pipe, but I think it burst because somebody took a hammer to it.
Yeah, burst pipe.
Wow.
But Matt, kind of shifting gears. What did you major in during your time at East Carolina, and just talk about what you've been up to since?
Yes, I majored in communications during my time there. Majored in football more than anything because that was my life during that time. But after I left North Carolina, I came back to New Jersey. I lived in New York City for several years. And then after I got married and had my first child, my wife and I moved up to Connecticut. My brother's actually a professor at UConn, and my wife has family here as well. So we wound up, we settled here in Connecticut. It's an interesting place to live. I do miss North Carolina quite a bit. I try to get back there as often as I can. I actually came back last year for the Gardner-Webb game. I had to get back for that game, and I try to get back at least once every few years to take in a game. But I miss Greenville, but Connecticut's a decent place to live for now.
Are you and Vince McMahon the only 2 alumni living in Connecticut?
We might be. We might be. I don't bump into many ECU alum up here. So that's why I was happy to be on the show, because I get a chance to talk about ECU football, which I don't get very many opportunities up here.
Do you think Connecticut's regretting at least leaving the American by 1 year right now with having to drop their football season because basically they were losing all their games?
I'll tell you, from the time that they joined the American Conference, it was just one excuse after another. The leadership at Connecticut felt like they belonged in the Big East, and I don't think they ever quite accepted the American Conference. To be perfectly honest, and I think, if you talk to the people in Connecticut, they value the basketball programs here more than football. Women's basketball here is top program in the country every year. The men's basketball team, they've won 4 national championships in the last 20 years or so. So basketball is king, and they really wanted to get back into the Big East. But, you just don't know how the football program can survive as an independent. They're not Notre Dame. They're not BYU. So it's a tough situation.
Yeah, and this year with dropping the season, it makes me wonder if they'll end up dropping the program after this.
I certainly hope not, Kyle, because when you live in Connecticut, you don't really have much else to watch. We don't have any professional teams here. We're right in the middle of Boston and New York. So, UConn is what you get. So, even though it's not the greatest environment for football, it's still fun to go tailgate and take in a college football game. So, hopefully that doesn't happen, but it wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't. I mean, they were financially in a lot of trouble as an athletic program. They were in some serious trouble.
Matt, you talk about being able to make it down for the home opener last year against Gardner-Webb. I know you have a family, and like you've referenced. So were you able to make it to the UConn game there late in the season?
Yeah, I actually, you know what? I wasn't able to make it to that UConn game because I was out of state for work at that point, unfortunately. But I did go to several of the UConn games, and I got to tell you that I have a lot of friends who are UConn graduates, and it would have been very painful had we lost that game. They'd probably still be. I don't know if I would have lived that one down. So I'm glad we pulled it out. I'll tell you, we almost gave it away there on a long touchdown pass, which I have no idea what we were doing defensively, to be honest. But thank God we pulled it out.
Yeah, that was a frustrating football game. I remember watching that, and Bubba, I think I was texting you the whole time, going, "We're going to blow this. We're going to blow this. We're going to blow this."
Yeah, it was just one of those games. You could tell just the vibe you had. It was not trending in the right direction, and like you're saying, Matt, yeah, that was mind-boggling. The way we were playing a little too much man-to-man coverage. That was as soon as I saw the way we were aligned and what they were doing offensively, you could see that one coming from a mile away, and them getting that mismatch with their running back or slot receiver on our defensive back, or maybe even a linebacker.
Yeah, no doubt. You could see it coming from a mile away, but it's a good thing we pulled it out, and I have bragging rights for another year, which is good.
That's right. Holding with the big score, and then we get the pick at the end of the game to ice it, and all you have to do is say we won. You don't have to worry about the score.
That's right. Nobody remembers the score after a year goes by. That's right.
Well, Matt, it's been awesome catching up. We didn't really intend to go this long. Well over an hour at this point. Most of these have not lasted that long, but we've really enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate your time, and we can certainly tell that you're still very passionate about the Pirates and follow the program very closely. We'd love to have you back on sometime for our Pirate football playback down the road when we take a look back at the games.
Hey guys, I really enjoyed it. It's great to be. I'm really honored to be on the program, and thanks for having me. I'm always happy to come back anytime. So feel free.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, thank you. Thank you much, Matt. Take care.
Yep.
And Bubba, I did not intend to involve Matt in my rant, but he didn't seem to mind. I hope he didn't. So I was going to save that for after, but kind of is what it is.
Yeah, that's what. And we're actually on 50 Pirates in 50 days from a double dip today, I guess, if you will, and double header. We are going to be talking to Maurice Falls here in just a little bit. So stay tuned for that one and check it out on the archives right here on Facebook and our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is pushing 200 subscribers now. We have some excellent playlists with old East Carolina football games. I think it's right at 115 old Pirate games, whether it's way back in 1965 in the Clarence Stasevich era or all the way up to present. Some of the games last year under Coach Houston and anywhere in between. A lot of excellent Pirate games that have been uploaded by various account holders there on YouTube that are diehard Pirates, and we certainly appreciate them uploading the games. And we have some that we've been going through our archive here over the last few nights, Kyle, and putting the list together ourselves of the ones we have in our archives that we need to get on YouTube so other Pirates can enjoy them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage anybody out there that has a collection of games, reach out to me and or Bubba, and we're interested in getting as many games on YouTube as possible of old East Carolina games.
It's really awesome, especially when right now, Kyle, it's been such a struggle, and we're praying for good news that we can play football games and that we won't be like you.
I don't see any reason. Again, Dave, I mean, I don't see any reason why we're not going to play football games unless the governor says we can't. Everything else is a go now.
Yeah, I think you're gonna see around that time, and that might be why we're waiting to announce anything. Is the very fact that we couldn't play to maybe September 12th anyway. I don't know.
But that's when phase 2 would be ending. I think you got to ask, and not just East Carolina, UNC, NC State, etc., has got to ask for an exception to play without fans, and I think it would be granted. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. You're allowing students to live in dorms. I mean, for Christ's sake, you're allowing 50 people in classrooms at colleges. So, I mean, up to 50. So I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be granted. And again, that particular part's not just on East Carolina. That's on all the schools in the UNC system that needs to be asked. That exception needs to be asked for.
Yeah,
But
and then we had
I'll tell you what, from a standpoint, without making it the political directive, if college football is being played and the schools in North Carolina are now not allowed to play,
see that. I don't see that.
that's going to be very, very, very bad. And yeah, that's all I'll say.
No, I don't see that happening. It would have to be like a whole bunch of deaths, a huge spike beyond belief for anything like that. Like I'm talking about thousands of people dying, in North Carolina at a time, something drastic for that. I don't see that happening. I do think that, for example, shameless plug here for me, but on Saturday, I'll be announcing, along with my broadcast partner, Kevin Bullock, at Southern National Motorsports Park. There's only 25 allowed in the grandstands. You have the number of suites there. The number of people are limited in the suite. Normally, I think it's 8 or 10 that's normally allowed, so it's well down to that 2 or 4.
Now you got pit crews, so you're well over 25 people. So special permission was granted for Southern National to do that. The 25 in the stands plus the drivers, etc.
Right, and they have people, the fans along the track side. It's like tailgating, so you have that. But I'm just making the point that, in other words, it's basically no fans there. So if you have, I know it's a small track and it's not, 13,000 or whatever it be at Dowdy Big One, but
but my point is, Dave, if that exception was granted for Southern National, then certainly it wouldn't be
it will be.
It wouldn't be a problem for exception to be granted to play football without fans.
It would have to, I'm saying the only way that we would not have football in North Carolina, it would have to be something like absurd numbers that would be obvious. Even you and I would be like.
Well, I mean, if that happens, then you're going to have the colleges shut down anyway. You're not, So to me, that's a moot point. To me, if the colleges are open, you're going to have college football and class.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's nothing. I'm pointing out there's nothing to worry about right now. It's a matter of, the question is not whether we're going to play football. The question is, when are we going to start? The question then becomes, okay, if we start, how many fans can we have? Is it 25%? Of the percentage of fans as far as capacity will come to mind, as far as the safety protocols and the.
Yeah, to me, what you do is you push the game back to the 12th of Marshall, and you either plan to play. You come up with the max percentage you're comfortable with now, and you say that's our max, and then you also plan to play it with no fans if that's what Cooper says, and you play that on the 12th, and then I'd like to see us schedule a road game for Labor Day weekend. I mean, people are scheduling left and right over the last 24 hours. Let's go on the road. I mean, let's go play somebody on the road Labor Day weekend. And get a game under our belt before we do battle with Marshall, which is a game that's important to our fan base.
Yeah, and there's enough people that need games right now. It's not like we're the only one in the it's not. It's like we're not the only school that needs a game.
I mentioned before, Dave, Tulane and Southern Miss announced they're going to play. Southern Miss filled both their dates. They're going to play at Tulane, and they're going to play a home game against Tennessee Tech to replace their 2 games they lost. Navy and BYU are going to play in Annapolis on Labor Day night. Southern Miss and Troy and Middle Tennessee State have announced they're going to play each other. I believe a home and home. I believe Middle and Troy are going to play 2 games with each other.
That's a great matchup right there between those 2 programs, and one being Conference USA and one being from Sunbelt. So it's not like, and that's another thing too, is the very fact that our good friend Phil Steele, by the way, folks, go to philsteele.com and get your magazine. We got it. I'm wondering, with everything, it's almost like, to give Phil credit, and to not give him a hard time, but it's almost like Phil Steele needs to have like a dry erase board for the schedules. You could just write the whole thing.
Yeah, we thought about that. If he could update the schedules and stuff like that on his
the app. I wish we could do that. Yeah,
probably make some extra money.
I would buy it. I would definitely buy it. So
I don't know that I would. The information is still applicable, except for the schedules. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to see, you know, and all I want from John is, meaning John Gilbert, is if we're going to stick with 10 games, I want an explanation as to why we're sticking with 10 games. When I see other conference members scheduling games. Navy's in our conference, Tulane's in our conference. And granted, there's some other conference members who haven't made any announcements. UCF, who needs, I think, 3 games, has not made any announcements that I'm aware of. So, you know, it ain't just us, but I'd like to at least add 1 game. And I don't want to keep, you know, just repeating myself, but I say, you know, why not? You know, if we're going to move that Marshall game back to the 12th, then let's go on the road Labor Day weekend. Let's find a road game. Hopefully, a road game that, you know, if you can do the North Carolina thing, if you can get a return date, great. But, you know, maybe find something on paper that's more winnable. I don't know what Coastal's looking like Labor Day weekend, but hey, you know, I think they're probably going to be more liberal with allowing fans down in South Carolina. Maybe the Pirates can make a trip down to Myrtle Beach for Labor Day weekend. Please wear your mask.
Oh my God. Yeah. Exactly. With the hotbed, unfortunately, Myrtle's been, hopefully, I think I'd been told the numbers have come down. I haven't checked recently, so don't hold me to that. I haven't checked with Dr. Bream or checked on my own about Myrtle Beach here lately. So in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but hopefully their numbers are coming down, especially when they need tourism, and that would be cool to have their numbers way low for just them, even without the game. If we could get a game with Coastal, but if not, if just talking about Myrtle Beach as a whole, for their numbers to be down, and hopefully our numbers will continue to go down, so that certainly, I think the one thing that concerns me, Kyle, and we'll wrap this thing up. We've got another one coming up here in just a few minutes, but my concern would be for us is to start the season prematurely, then have to stop, then start. So I think
that's the case. That's the case, Dave. I mean, if you know, look, to be honest with you, as of right now, if we didn't schedule any more games, if we play the 29th, we're not going to play again until UCF. If we weren't scheduled any more games, so that would start to stop right there. That'd be basically almost a month in between games. I would expect. I hope by tomorrow, but I would expect at least by Monday, the announcement on when we're playing that Marshall game will be made. I hope. It needs to be. It's getting ridiculous. I mean, as we sit here this Saturday, what is this Saturday? The 8th?
8th.
So, I mean, we're 3 weeks away. So, you need to make that announcement if you're not that you are or aren't playing that game on the 29th.
I don't see there's anything's possible. I don't see them playing the game. It'll be September 12th.
Most likely. I mean, you could play it. I mean, you could play it without fans. But I think there's no reason to when you can potentially.
That's a special game.
Well,
it's a special game, and then that way you would have it would make more sense too. We'll leave on this wrapping things up. But September 12th, if you have the game September 12th, for fans that don't know, Marshall lost the game with Pitt, of course, with the ACC. So that's an open date. You move the game to September 12th, and then you would have the cool thing about that, Kyle. If you're a football coach like Mike Houston, and speaking of somebody that's about details and planning, it makes more sense to have 12 games between from that time, assuming that the UCF game will remain on the Thursday night on the 24th. If it does, then that would be only 12 days between those 2 games.
Sure.
That makes more sense than to have almost a month. That is
plus you also have a chance of maybe having fans allowed in the stadium.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we would have the 25% of fans, the close to 13,000 versus if August 29th, you might have none, or, the 25, which would be crazy. So anyway, folks, we'll keep talking, obviously, daily here. Obviously, you can find 50 Pirates in 50 Days on SoundCloud, and we have it this year on Anchor. And of course, you can listen to the Sports Objective or watch it anytime on Facebook Live. You can we have it archived on our YouTube channel. Go and like that and subscribe on YouTube. And we'll be back very soon here on the Sports Objective Podcast. Go Pirates.